Tokyo, 37 million people, the largest metropolis on Earth. It did not begin with an emperor or a shogun. It began in 1457 as a small castle above a muddy bay, built by a man most of the world has never heard of. He was a soldier who reportedly never lost a battle, a poet admired in the capital, an administrator centuries ahead of his time, and in the end his own lord invited him to a bath and had him killed there for being too good at his job. This is the story of Ota Dokan, the forgotten samurai who built Tokyo. If you saw our last episode, you remember Uesugi Norizane, the deputy who destroyed his own master and saved Japan's books. After his tragedy, eastern Japan broke apart. The shogun's cousin in the east went into open rebellion and set up a rival court. The Uesugi family, Norizane's heirs, split into two rival branches. For 30 years, the Kanto Plain was a chessboard of small wars. Here is the strange part. The great lords who officially owned this chessboard rarely ran anything. Each great house had a hereditary chief steward, a kasai. Think of the lord as the owner of a company and the steward as the CEO who actually runs it. The armies, the money, the castles, the diplomacy. Ota Dokan was born in 1432 into the family that served as stewards of the Ogigayatsu branch of the Uesugi. On paper, he was a servant of a servant. In practice, by his 30s, he was the most capable man in eastern Japan. General, engineer, negotiator, and financier, all in one person. The records describe a small, sharp-tongued man who read constantly and did not suffer fools. His lord, Uesugi Sadamasa, was younger, proud, and painfully aware of which of the two of them people actually respected. In 1457, to anchor the defense of the plain, Dokan built a castle on a hill where several rivers met the sea. The site was nothing: marsh, reeds, a fishing village. But Dokan read the land like a merchant, not a warrior. Rivers to move rice, a bay for ships, dry high ground for roads. He called it Edo. He did not stop at walls. He invited merchants, monks, and poets. He built docks and markets. Within a generation, the nothing place had become the crossroads of the East. There is a famous story about him. Caught in a sudden rain while hunting, Dokan stopped at a poor hut and asked for a straw raincoat. A young woman silently handed him a yellow mountain rose. He rode off furious, until a retainer explained, in a classical poem, the mountain rose bears no fruit. And in Japanese, no fruit sounds exactly like no raincoat. Too poor to own one, she had apologized in poetry, assuming he would understand. Dokan, the most feared man in the East, had missed it. He was ashamed, and he did something rare. Instead of punishing the embarrassment, he treated it. He threw himself into the study of poetry and became one of the celebrated poets of his generation. Remember that. It matters later. In 1476, the East exploded. A powerful retainer named Nagao Kageharu passed over for the post his family considered theirs, rose in revolt. Castles fell like dominoes. Both Uesugi branches, the rivals, stood on the edge of ruin together. What followed was Dokan's masterpiece. For 5 years, he was everywhere, relieving besieged castles, storming rebel forts, winning field battles, by tradition, more than 30 engagements without a single defeat. His secret was not heroism, it was systems. While other commanders still fought as crowds of aristocratic duelists, Dokan drilled common foot soldiers, cheap, disciplined, massed spears, and used speed the way later generals would use gunpowder. It was the future of Japanese warfare, decades early. By 1480, the rebellion was broken. Dokan had saved his own lord, and awkwardly, his lord's rivals too. Everyone in the East now knew who the indispensable man was, and that was precisely the problem. Success made Dokan larger than his station. Poets traveled from the capital to his castle at Edo. Rival lords whispered to his master, Sadamasa, "Your steward keeps your armies, your castles, your money. What exactly do you keep?" Dokan, brilliant with land and armies, was careless with something poets are supposed to understand: other men's pride. He spoke bluntly. He corrected his lord in front of others. He assumed like the girl with the flower had assumed of him, that competence would be understood. In the summer of 1486, Sadamasa invited him to his residence in the hills of Sagami. After the meal, the honored guest was offered a bath. As Dokan stepped out, unarmed and unarmored, a swordsman was waiting. Tradition records his last words as 2 words, Toho Metsubo. Our house is finished. He was right. Deprived of its one indispensable man, his lord's house rotted within a generation, and a ruthless newcomer, the Hojo, swallowed the Kanto whole. The East fell into exactly the chaos Dokan had spent his life holding back. The age the world calls Sengoku had begun. A century later, in 1590, Tokugawa Ieyasu was ordered to move his power base to the east. Of all the castles he could have chosen, he picked a half-abandoned one above a muddy bay, because the rivers, the harbor, and the roads were exactly where a forgotten steward had put them. Edo grew into the largest city of the 18th century world. In 1868, it was renamed Tokyo. The lord who ordered Dokan's death is a footnote. The steward city holds 37 million people. Here is the lesson. An organization that fears its most capable people has already chosen decline. And if you are the capable one, remember the flower in the rain. Being right is not enough. You must also be understood. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe. Forgotten Japan tells the stories that the famous tales of samurai and shoguns leave out. Next time, a poet with no army, no castle, and no master, who walked unarmed through 100 years of war and outlived almost everyone in this story.